We are continuing to see troubling activity out of China, and that's putting it very mildly. What we have seen going on in Hong Kong now with arrests that will just make you pull your hair out of your head, with now sanctions upon American politicians and business leaders for, what was it here? Performing badly, and so much more, including now one of the senior intelligence officials of the United States saying, hey, we've got a concern about China interfering in America's election, hoping that Joe Biden might become president of the United States. What are we to make of it all? For answers and discussion, I am very pleased to welcome back to Jimmy at the Crossroads, Gordon G. Chang, author of The Coming Collapse of China. Also, most recently, he's now the author of The Great U.S.-China Tech War and Losing South Korea. He's been published in numerous publications, including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the National Interest, and many others, and is a Gatestone Institute Fellow, and he joins us now here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. Gordon, welcome back, my friend. It's good to have you.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Jimmy.
Thanks for coming on. I mean, look, how would you describe the situation with China right now? Because I definitely think troubling is probably an understatement at this point, given everything that's going on.
Yeah, it's extremely dangerous what Beijing is doing because it's moving across the board against a range of countries and people, of course. So you have, for instance, in June, in a premeditated act, it killed 20 Indian soldiers. You have the end of autonomy in Hong Kong, and that is with the jailings that we have just witnessed, the arrest of Jimmy Lai, his two sons, and 4 executives of Apple Daily, the pro-democracy newspaper, and the troubling intercepts of the U.S. Navy in the global commons, a threat to dismember Japan, which Beijing made on August 2. So it's just going after everyone, and you got to wonder, why is China taking on the world? I mean, is this an act of strength? Is it an act of weakness? Whatever it is disrupting peace in not only just the region, but everywhere.
And so when it comes to Hong Kong, let's zero in there, because there had been this idea of one country, two systems that was supposed to last until, what, 2050 or so in terms of the relationship between Hong Kong and China, where Hong Kong would essentially be able to continue its autonomous or semi-largely autonomous state. China just decided in the past few months to scrap that, and now they've been arresting dissidents, they're arresting media figures, and many others. So in terms of Hong Kong specifically, what are we noticing is exactly happening, particularly in terms of the change in the way China is treating Hong Kong, that Americans must know about, Gordon?
Ended Hong Kong, which was promised until 2047 under the one country, two systems formula. This was a promise documented in a treaty with Britain, the Sino-British Joint Declaration of 1984. And on June 30, China enacted its national security law, which is draconian in the extreme. As people have said, this is the end of law in Hong Kong. And they've used it now to arrest a number of protesters, dissidents, and most famously, Jimmy Lai, the publisher of Apple Daily. They try to decapitate the paper. They basically, their position is, unless you are completely in love with China and completely submit yourself to it, you're probably violating the national security law just by breathing. And that really is, as people say, the end of any sort of autonomy in Hong Kong. This has important implications for the United States and for other countries, because Hong Kong is a global financial center, but probably won't retain that status because China is using coercion in a way that really makes it very difficult for international financial institutions to operate freely.
Yeah, so when we're talking about Hong Kong, one of the things that we have noticed is that people there are not just taking this sitting down or lying down. They have been out there protesting, making their voices heard, getting arrested, as we're talking about, particularly because I think that they have dealt with this perspective, come from this perspective of freedom, that they've been able to live their lives as they see fit. Hong Kong has been a financial capital of the world. In fact, a great many studies have identified Hong Kong as a leading free market area on the globe. And now that's being taken away. And they're like, we see what's happened in other parts of China when they have done this. We don't want it to happen here. Is that right?
Yes, well, this is important because Taiwan, one country, two systems, which is supposed to apply in Hong Kong, was originally developed by Beijing for Taiwan. And Taiwan has always been the big prize for Beijing. Now, last year, Tsai Ing-wen, the president of Taiwan, she wasn't going to be even renominated by her own party for the election which occurred in January. She was so far behind. But when Beijing started to try to put the screws into Hong Kong with this extradition bill that it proposed, all of a sudden people in Taiwan remembered why they enjoyed their freedom, why everything was so important to them. And Tsai Ing-wen, she got the nomination of the Democratic Progressive Party to run for re-election, and she won in a landslide, which shows you that Beijing's policies are ham-fisted, but nonetheless, what's happening in Hong Kong is a lesson for the rest of the world. This is what Beijing will do. It will not honor its promises. And that means whether we're talking about trade or whether we're talking about climate change or whatever, Beijing does not honor its words.
Gordon G. Chang, our guest here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. And I do want to make one correction. It's the Gatestone Institute that you're a fellow at. I think I was combining that with a Star Trek Institute, the Daystrom Institute, and combining a brand new institute that Gordon Chang is involved with. But that is not the case. So Gordon,
Jimmy,
yes, sir.
Jimmy, I would love to be at Starfleet Academy. So thank you very much.
Now, Gordon Chang, when we look at the dynamics between President Trump and President Xi, one of the things we cannot ignore is the election that's coming up on November 3rd. We're just a few months away from Election Day. Voting starts in a matter of weeks. And Ambassador Robert O'Brien, who is the National Security Advisor, has indicated that he believes and that intelligence is showing that China wants Joe Biden to be elected president of the United States. On the Hugh Hewitt show yesterday, President Trump was specifically asked about that here in Cut 8. Let's take a quick listen and get some reaction from you.
Ambassador O'Brien said China wants Vice President Biden to win. Why do you think that is?
Because they'll own the United States if he wins. And with me, they were having the worst year in 67 years because I tariffed the hell out of them. We took in billions and billions of dollars. I gave some of it to the farmers because they were targeted, and I put the rest in the Treasury of the United States. We've taken in tens of billions of dollars from China, and it was having a huge impact on China, negative impact on China.
You're still the best.
China will own, just like when his son walked out with $1.5 billion from China to manage, where he'll make millions of dollars a year. Look, China will own the United States if this election is lost by Donald Trump. If I don't win the election, China will own the United States. You're going to have to learn to speak Chinese.
I don't want to get you into a political discussion, Gordon Chang, but I'm just curious what you make of what Ambassador O'Brien has said and also what President Trump is claiming there, that China will own the United States if Joe Biden becomes president.
First of all, I do believe that Beijing does not want President Trump to be elected. China watchers have views that span that Beijing favors Biden or Beijing favors Trump. But when you look at the propaganda that Beijing has been issuing, and you look at some of the things that they've been doing under the surface, under the table, they point to their desire to unseat President Trump. And that's because Trump was right when he said to Hugh Hewitt, his actions were causing problems for Beijing. I think China's in a world of hurt right now for a number of reasons, but one of them is that President Trump has exacerbated a number of their economic and other problems. So Trump's right on that. As for whether Beijing will own the United States if Biden will be elected, I don't think they'll own us, but I do think we're going to lose time. As I mentioned, Biden is going to try to develop a cooperative relationship with China. He not only believes China is benign, but that we should do this. What's going to happen in a Biden presidency is you'll have a year of weak and humiliating policies, like we saw during the Obama administration with regard to China. And Xi Jinping, though, is not going to reciprocate. He's going to, I think, double down and become even worse. And so even Biden will have to pivot and have Trump-like policies, but we will have lost a critical year. So I don't agree with President Trump when he says the Chinese will own us. The Chinese are driving the changes in the relationship, not the United States. And Biden will have to do what any American president will do. That's defend the United States. And if he doesn't do it, he'll be driven from office.
What policy tools, in your opinion, Gordon Chang, are in President Trump's toolbox that he hasn't used yet that he should use, or maybe that he has used that he should press a little more?
The number one thing that I would do if I were advising the president would be, I think President Trump should use his powers under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977 to end all technical cooperation arrangements between U.S. companies and China. And specifically, the ones that come to mind would be Google's partnerships in China on artificial intelligence. These are fed, the products of this type of research is fed directly into the Chinese military. Google knows or should know that because Beijing has this policy, which is an announced policy, of civil military fusion. And so we should not be helping the Chinese build a military which is being configured to kill Americans. Also, Microsoft has partnership arrangements which would be targeted, but I would end those. That's the first thing that I would do. But in general, I think what the United States needs to do is to reduce drastically, even cut off trade and investment between the two countries for a number of reasons.